Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. It's always interesting to see what happens and what is said when a boxer loses a big fight. Fans, media, and even other fighters, they all wade in, they all pile in and pick over the carcass that is the loss, and while it's fresh. Some of the criticisms, they are warranted, while others, they get inflated into issues bigger than perhaps they really are. But one thing is certain, everyone has an opinion. And this loss Joseph Parker has taken from Dillian Whyte, no different. I've had people talking to me about the result, and they didn't even watch the fight, but they've seen some coverage in the news or heard others talking about it. And generally the tenor has been along the lines of, well, shame he lost again. Is he going to continue? Is he going to retire? Or, I heard he didn't fight that well. And much of the sentiment, it is driven by the media coverage. And an example of this was New Zealand state broadcaster TVNZ, Television New Zealand. It led on the night after Joseph Parker's loss, saying Joseph Parker's career is in the balance. And when I first heard that line, I thought, that's a little bit over the top, but when I thought about it, I thought in some ways it's accurate because what he does from here, it's very important. We always knew the loser in this fight was going to have some rebuilding to do of some description, some nature. They were going to take some sort of hit. I mean, potentially worst case scenario, it's a 2 or 3 year rebuild for Parker. Best case scenario, maybe a year, but maybe that's being charitable. Other coverage in the mainstream media, social media and elsewhere, it's also thrown up a number of things that I want to touch on in relation to Joseph Parker, and also a few thoughts of my own. So I'll start with the tenor of the New Zealand-based media coverage to Joseph Parker's loss, because there's a couple of points sitting behind it that I do want to touch on. And as you'd expect, it's not the most positive coverage. It's been very questioning. Joseph Parker, can he come back? Does he have the desire? Does he have the will? Is he too nice? Does he lack the mongrel? Is he going to change things up? Should he be ditching Kevin Barry? And a lot of these are things that I'll touch on later, but a lot of these things are, we've all been asking ourselves. But I would say in relation to New Zealand media and Joseph Parker, it's been a very lovey-dovey sort of relationship over the years. For the most part, Joseph Parker has enjoyed a very easy ride from the New Zealand media for the majority of his career. I've commented on this channel before that there had been very few pertinent questions asked about where Joseph Parker was really at different stages in his career. And more recently, I'm talking about, even when performances, like the Kajanu one, the Fury one, raised some questions. There were issues that were apparent that weren't quite right. But because he was winning, it was a paper over the cracks type situation. It was sort of forgotten about almost immediately, or not even really dwelled upon. No one in the mainstream media has really been questioning whether Joseph Parker has plateaued. Even after the Anthony Joshua loss, the criticism wasn't really overall that stinging. And there were a number of positives, such as him taking Joshua 12 rounds for the first time in Joshua's career. That was a big part of the coverage. It was such a big fight. He ended up getting quite a bit of coverage because he conducted himself well. And he might not have gotten the result, but he didn't embarrass himself as well. But now, the majority of the coverage, it's not positive. A lot of it openly questions Parker, questions his team, what they're doing, the tactics, the direction. Where is his career heading? And there's even suggestions, is he going to continue in boxing? But I guess 2 losses on the trot, and high-profile losses, that is going to dent your reputation to some degree, even if those losses have come against the best in the world. And there's no shame in that. But it's certainly unfamiliar territory for Joseph Parker, and his relationship with the media, it's shifted. And indeed, it will probably shift with fans to some extent. And it may not even be perceptible at first. This sort of thing will be seen later on. I'm talking more about the casual fan. Until now, Joseph Parker, he's enjoyed unquestioned support. But with the tenor of the coverage being at best neutral, and more realistically rather negative, it's going to rub off on people who are reading, listening, or watching these stories. I would sort of harken back to David Tua as a bit of a prime example. after his loss to Lennox Lewis, his profile, it sort of fell off the map for a number of years. And apart from a much hyped 2009 fight with domestic rival Shane Cameron, I very much doubt many New Zealanders could name one fight that he fought in the years after the Lewis one. I mean, and most of it isn't personal. In Tua's case, he lost and casual fans just moved on. It can be brutal like that. And those were the days that, pre-social media, so it was easier to get lost in the shuffle, especially when there's other things people have got their eye on. But part of it is also New Zealanders, they love a winner, and they'll back their elite sports people while they're winning. But if the wheels fall off to any extent, the fans go ghost. And some people didn't like that I'd raised this point, a few weeks ago. Some passionate supporters tried to sort of bring in the example of the All Blacks and say people support New Zealand elite sports people unconditionally, and the All Blacks were cited, by a few people. And, the All Blacks are unconditionally supported. But rugby, it's ingrained in New Zealand's psyche. It's ingrained in the blood. It is the exception, not the rule. In the All Blacks, you've got over 100 years of excellence, where with boxing, the numbers of elite fighters produced by New Zealand, it's few and far between. We just have to be realistic about that. David Tua and Joseph Parker have carried New Zealand boxing on its back on the international stage in their respective areas in the past 25 years or so. So there's absolutely a correlation between winning and overall fan support, in my view. And, you see this the world over. But I said prior to this fight, Parker, I felt, was at a bit of a tipping point situation with his sort of core support. He needed to turn in a good performance to keep the fans on side. There'd been a number of, lackluster efforts where a lot of people were starting to ask questions. People were starting to go a little bit cold on him. And they spoke of needing a good performance, to put a performance that, Joseph Parker puts on in the gym and so on and so forth. The well-worn lines that you hear from Kevin Barry, ahead of after every fight and then after every fight when that performance is not delivered. Did he deliver that sort of performance against Whyte? Well, maybe in the first round, but apart from that and, the final maybe minute of the 12th round, it wasn't much to write home about. But, you have to give Dillian Whyte credit for that, because he fought his fight and was able to nullify Parker to some extent. And in terms of his public profile after that Whyte fight, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. He went off the boil for stretches, he wasn't active enough, but then he did redeem himself in that final round with that flurry. Without that finish, I'm sure the resulting coverage, it would have been much worse. And they probably know that too. One of the questions that is frequently raised, and even before this fight from hardcore boxing fans, and it's cropped up again, you can probably guess where I'm going now, is it time for Joseph Parker to get a new trainer? Parker, he has ruled that out immediately though, saying at the presser, our partnership is really strong. This is a fight I've taken on the chin. If I executed the plan, it would have been different. I'm sticking with the team I have. Kevin Barry's response was, I'm a little insulted to be asked that question. I can't get in the ring and throw the punches for Joe. I give everything I have for this man. I love this man. My mission is to make him as good as he can be. I'm totally dedicated and devoted to Joe. We don't just train in the gym for 1 hour a day. We spend the whole day together every day. I get it, they have a close bond, but Barry, he shouldn't be offended the question is asked. He should be expecting it. It's a question that would realistically, and did come, because it needed to be asked after Parker's performance. He's lost 2 in a row now. He's been a bit patchy at world level. So why wouldn't it be asked? It's a legitimate question. And has Barry taken Parker as far as he can go? But before I get into that a bit more, consider this. You will have noticed Joseph Parker, he is frustratingly always talking about we and our. We're a young team. We can come back. We've trained hard. And even this clunker from the post-fight presser, he said, when he was asked about the 9th round knockdown, he said, our team showed heart to get back up and fight on. What does that even mean? Our team showed heart to get back up. You got back up, Joseph. But the thing is, when reflecting on the actual loss in the same presser, Parker takes it on the chin himself, saying, for one of the rare times, saying, if I had have executed a lot better, it would have been a better fight. And you just heard Kevin Barry before saying, I can't get in the ring and throw the punches for Joe. And previously, he's also deflected on blame and put it back on Parker for some of the underwhelming performances that Parker has been involved in the past 18 months. I mean, the question I would ask is, if Joseph Parker can't execute the game plan and, set aside his own shortcomings for not being able to do so, shouldn't there be some questions asked if the game plan is right? Why can't Joseph Parker execute it? Is he getting the right direction in the corner? Is the right tactics strategy being employed? And is Kevin Barry able to get through to Joseph Parker and direct him at the crucial times in fights? And if not, why not? Even if the same setup remains, which it looks likely it will, surely there needs to be a critical look at the situation. Perhaps some fresh thinking and a few tweaks are needed. You don't want to continue to be in that close but no cigar bracket at the elite level, because you could see that happening. Another thing that's coming up is is Joseph Parker too nice? Does he have enough mongrel? He promised to show more mongrel in the Dillian Whyte fight, and maybe there was a bit more of it. He was more aggressive, but coming forward a bit more doesn't necessarily mean mongrel. We really saw some mongrel from Whyte, who was really pulling out an arsenal of dirty tactics and getting away with it. Those dirty tricks, you have to give Whyte some credit for the savvy. Joseph Parker should have been getting some direction from his corner to push the boat out and return the favour, but he didn't really do that. And Parker said ahead of the fight a few weeks ago that if Dillian Whyte held his head down, he'd punch him in the balls. He said this in an Instagram clip that, I've played a couple of times on the channel. He didn't do that. And actually, when he said that, I don't know if anyone really believed that he would do that, because it would be out of character for him to do that. Even Tyson Fury has waded in on the nice thing, saying Parker is a bit too nice. He needs to get a bit more venom in him and spite. And it really has been an ongoing criticism. I remember when he knocked out Franz Botha, what was this, back in 2013, 2012, whatever it was, so 5 years ago at least. Some were saying then that he was lacking a vicious streak, and that someone with a vicious streak would have followed through on the punch that Parker pulled out from when Botha was on the ropes and clearly done. But, others were saying that, someone like David Tua, like he did John Ruiz, would have still clipped him and really put him out for the count. So this whole, he hasn't got enough mongrel, that he's too nice, that he doesn't have enough spite in him, he's not vicious enough, that's followed him around basically his whole career. It's always been a question mark. And maybe he is too nice. But that doesn't necessarily mean he can't fight and he can't have success, because clearly he has had success. But I don't know if he can fundamentally change who he is either. I've seen some comments online in my comment section too saying Parker didn't show heart in the fight against Dillian Whyte. And that's not something I can really agree with. He may not have had the best fight. He went sort of absent and missing and MIA for a few rounds there. I mean, some of that was, he recovered from a headbutt, but also around those mid-rounds, he just sort of, his gas tank empty, looked to be conserving his energy, and he really, nothing much was doing. But he did take 12 rounds of punishment from Whyte. He hauled himself off the canvas in the ninth after taking a massive punch, and he fought on. And then he almost stole the fight by unloading everything that he had in the 12th. It was a bit late, but he still did it. So, I think he did display heart. He got up when he didn't need to. Kevin Barry looked like he was going to call off the fight when he came in after that round where he's knocked down, but Parker said he wanted to fight on. And relatedly, there's been questions about whether Joseph Parker wants to go on. A media outlet called News Hub, in one of its stories, led off with, "Have we seen the last of former world heavyweight champion Joseph Parker in the boxing ring?" and then went on to quote Derek Chisora as saying, "I think Parker won't be fighting again. He doesn't want to train anymore. He doesn't have the hunger. I saw that in there." And often cited as reasons that apparently he doesn't have desire is because he's made millions of dollars against Anthony Joshua. But Parker himself, on this whole matter of whether he wants to continue boxing, if he's got the desire, says, "I'm already set for life. I have a home. I can look after my family. The money comes, but I'm boxing for the passion and the love that I still have. Even though it does put food on the table, I'm doing it because I love the sport. I'm in this for the long haul. I have a great team. I'm taking the blame for this fight. I didn't execute the plan, but I know the plan we had in place was a great plan. When you're fighting the best in the world, it's not always going to go your way. You've got to keep learning, keep training hard, and if you have the drive and motivation to carry on, then why not?" He was also quoted as saying, "I'm not done yet. I'm finishing around 30 or 31, so I'm going to go hard for the next few years. I want to be a 2-time world champion. It's how you come back. I want to fight soon. I'm in good shape now and I want to maintain it. I want to maintain it better than the other times I've been home." And he was also quoted as saying, "I'm not broken." He is saying all the right things here, but, we'll have to see. The proof is certainly in the pudding. I'll leave it to you to decide about Joseph Parker's desire, and his heart for that matter. In terms of what next, it's a good question. The whole never been dropped thing, well, that's clearly out the window, and Parker, he cannot use that again. And now he really just needs a win. He can't drop a third fight on the bounce. He needs a win in his next fight. His promoter, David Higgins, has stated, "Finding the right comeback opportunity won't be hard. I've soaked up the response from the public. I sat sandwiched between Eddie and Barry Hearn, so I've been privy to their views, which I won't share now. I'm not concerned about the immediate future. There will be good opportunities. We will take our time, but we won't take easy fights. Never. There's no point fighting bums. We will line up a decent fight. If I was a betting man, I'd say we'd fight in the UK sooner rather than later." If Joseph Parker, if he does want to come back, if the desire is in fact still there after a long break, or a break of some description, he will find his place on a card somewhere, an undercard of a good bill. But after 2 losses and ruling out bum fights, he's probably not going to be headlining his own card, especially if it's in the UK. But don't be surprised, given his options have narrowed, that the working relationship with Eddie Hearn, that it does continue to deepen, and that we do see him on one of Hearn's undercards before the end of the year. And Parker's next play, it could very well be signing to some sort of DAZN deal. There's options for him, but he's going to have to make some adjustments and improvements to beat the very best. Not many, on the strength of what we saw against Dillian Whyte, would pick him to beat Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Luis Ortiz, and maybe 1 or 2 others. He needs to do more. He needs to make those adjustments and show us the improvements. He's got the opportunity now. Right now, I see him as a top 10 contender. Probably a perennial top 10 contender, for the rest of his career. But he's going to have to do something to prove to us that he can, really get back into the elite conversation. So in some respects, his career is a little bit in the balance because not the success, because he's had huge success so far, but the sustained success at the top level depends on how carefully he is handled right now and managed from here on out. There's no shame in a loss, no shame in 2 losses. He's still got a good record. He's been a world champion. He's got some good names on his record. But he needs to get back that winning feeling. He needs to build some confidence. He needs to come back stronger and work on some of those flaws. And it's not just him who needs to do that. If he sticks with Kevin Barry, well, everyone involved is going to need to reassess what they're doing and make the adjustments accordingly. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.